Thank you for the invitation to speak today at the National Housing Conference. And I'm very pleased it's being hosted in my home state of Victoria. Can I acknowledge Ahuri and Chair Jennifer Kunich and Managing Director Dr. Michael Fotheringham. Thank you for the invitation. I'd also like to acknowledge the experts from across the industry, the housing providers, developers and lenders who are here today to discuss the latest evidence, policy developments and best practice affecting housing outcomes across Australia. As you all know, housing's fundamental to our well-being. It's the bedrock of connections to family, friends and community. It improves education and health outcomes, leads to greater workforce participation and improved productivity. And for the majority of Australians who own their own homes, it underpins their financial security as their largest single asset. The government, I can assure you, is committed to assisting people wherever they are on the housing spectrum, whether they're looking for a first home, in the private rental market, or those in community and social housing. The past couple of years have, of course, been tumultuous in the housing market, as they have for the broader Australian economy. At the onset of the pandemic, many expected a substantial period of weakness in the housing market. There was no shortage of dire predictions, but as we know, the housing market has come through this period remarkably strongly. The government's home builder program also provided crucial support at a time when the sector and the economy needed it most. And more than 300,000 Australians have been supported into home ownership with direct support of the Morrison government, including 60,000 through our home guarantee scheme that helps first home buyers and single parent families overcome the deposit hurdle. And in addition to the home builder program, which assisted more than 200,000 Australians into a home. The Australian government's also supporting state and territory governments by providing around $9.3 billion in the 21-22 year to improve housing and homelessness outcomes. This includes an expected $5.3 billion through the Commonwealth Rental Assistance, which will assist around 1.6 million eligible individuals and families. $1.6 billion to the states for discretionary spending through the National Housing and Homelessness Agreement, including $131.8 million in dedicated homelessness funding. National Housing Finance Investment Corporation is another investment that I'm particularly proud of. The National Housing Finance Investment Corporation, which was established in 2018, recognised the role of the community housing sector in the supply of affordable homes. And since then, the NIFIC board has approved $2.8 billion in low-cost, long-term loans to eligible community housing providers. This has supported over 14,000 new and existing social and affordable dwellings. To build on NIFIC's early success, the government also recently increased its liability cap from $3 billion to $3.5 billion. This will support another 2,500 social and affordable dwellings over the period ahead. NIFIC also administers the government's $1 billion National Housing Infrastructure Facility. The NIF, as I call it, recognises that the provision of critical infrastructure, whether that be water, transportation, sewage and electricity, too often impedes or slows the development and supply of affordable housing projects. Over $320 million in loans and grants have been approved under the NIF since 2018, which has supported the delivery of more than 6,700 new dwellings. This includes an agreement with the New South Wales Land and Housing Corporation for up to $100 million to support infrastructure works, enabling 781 new social and affordable homes across Sydney. One of the groups most at risk of homelessness are women and children fleeing domestic and family violence. Yet the Department of Social Service reports that 10,000 women and children are turned away from emergency accommodation every year. That's why the government's also investing $72.6 million in the Safe Places Emergency Accommodation Program for women and children escaping family and domestic violence. It's a national capital works grant program building or purchasing dwellings to create safe emergency accommodation. It will provide about 780 new safe places and assist nearly 6,500 women and children each year. Identifying the areas of need now and in the future would not be possible without a clear view across Australia's entire housing landscape. That's why you're all here today. In the 2019 MYEFO, the government provided funding to establish a dedicated housing research function within the National Housing Finance and Investment Corporation. NIFIC's tasked with examining housing demand, supply and affordability, and identifying potential gaps in the housing demand and supply market. The government's also investing $5.8 million over 3 years to continue funding AHURI's National Housing and Urban Research Program, which informs housing, urban design and homelessness and policy development. The government's, in addition to this, investing $1.2 million to fund the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare's Housing Data Dashboard. The dashboard brings together approximately 7 million data points in a one-stop shop for key national data, including housing market, financial data, through to regional population changes and homelessness estimates. Again, housing's fundamental to the welfare, health and productivity of all Australians. And the government's committed to working with state, territory and local governments to provide funding to improve housing outcomes, funding to NIFIC to improve financing and research, a focus on improving the planning of cities and funding for safe places. So I congratulate you for the important work you're doing and wish you all the best for the remainder of the conference.